There are wars that fill pages and pages of history books. Conflicts with heroes, villains, dates, flags, and clear endings. But there are other wars that never made it to the classroom. Wars fought in the shadows, without official recognition. Ghost wars. Today we open the dossier of the conflicts the world chose to forget or hide. These are operations launched without formal declarations, carried out by forces without uniforms. Territories turned into silent battlegrounds. Entire populations impacted, yet no plaques, no memorials, no textbook chapters. Let's start with one of the most overlooked, the secret war in Laos. During the Cold War, while Vietnam dominated the headlines, the United States was quietly conducting a clandestine campaign in Laos. Officially, the country was neutral. In practice, it became the stage for one of the largest aerial bombing campaigns in history. From 1964 to 1973, more than 2 million tons of explosives were dropped over Laotian territory, more than all those dropped in Europe during World War II. But this wasn't just a war of bombs. It was a war of messages, influence, and containment. The objective was to prevent the spread of communism through parallel routes. Many of the attacks weren't against soldiers but against trails, supply camps, and hidden jungle bases. Each strike was based on highly confidential intelligence, crossing data from satellites, spies, and radio interceptions. While the world saw the conflict as a war against Vietnam, the real battlefield was larger, invisible, often denied. The pilots flying over Laos didn't wear identifying uniforms. Their aircraft were often painted in neutral colors without insignia. If shot down, they would not be acknowledged. They operated on the edge between silence and sacrifice. Another lesser-known chapter is Operation Condor. In the 1970s, military governments in South America, many facing violent insurgencies, coordinated efforts to track and neutralize subversive threats. The operation involved intelligence sharing between Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Bolivia. These countries were on the brink of chaos. Armed groups funded by foreign powers were attempting to destabilize governments and install authoritarian regimes under new banners. Operation Condor sought to contain that advance. And although its methods remain debated, many argue that without this coordinated response, the region might have plunged into full-scale civil war. Declassified documents show that the United States provided technical and strategic support, not to dominate the region, but to prevent the Cold War from erupting openly in the Western Hemisphere. The doctrine of containment was applied, and stability, though fragile, was preserved. There were also silent conflicts on the Afghanistan-Pakistan border in the early 2000s. While the world focused on Iraq, special forces and precision drones eliminated high-level terrorist figures hiding in remote tribal areas. These actions, though not always publicly acknowledged, were decisive in stopping planned attacks and dismantling extremist networks. These operations were based on extremely accurate intelligence. Each mission was approved through rigorous risk assessments, civilian impact evaluations, and strategic feasibility analyses. The operatives involved often underwent intense training and in many cases, their names were never recorded in public files. These are just some examples of operations that don't appear in school curriculums, not due to lack of importance, but because they operated in the gray zone of history, where secrecy was a strategic necessity. Other cases include silent interventions that prevented civil wars in Pacific Islands. Special missions that secured access to natural resources in unstable regions. Support for fragile democracies on the brink of collapse due to ideological takeovers. Let's also talk about the role of American peacekeeping forces in regions that never made headlines. Haiti, Somalia, the Balkans. In many of these places, the American presence, though controversial, prevented greater massacres. Soldiers serving under the UN flag or directly under U.S. command acted as temporary barriers between factions on the verge of destroying everything around them. And what about infiltration missions into black market nuclear weapons trafficking? Information revealed years later shows that U.S. agents intercepted illegal transactions involving enriched uranium in black markets across Asia and Europe. Without fanfare, without recognition, these professionals stopped dangerous materials from falling into the wrong hands. These ghost conflicts may not have flags or parades, but they helped shape the modern geopolitical landscape. Sometimes, the most important victories are the ones won in silence. Why are they rarely discussed? Because these missions involve partnerships, strategies, and outcomes that rely on discretion. They weren't fought for glory, but for stability. And perhaps that's what makes them so vital. The United States, with all its flaws, has often shouldered the burden of responsibility when others chose to look away. In these ghost wars, it wasn't about conquest, but about containment, about stopping chaos from spreading. The history taught in schools is often a snapshot, simplified, summarized, formatted. But the real history is in the background, in the secret documents, in the operations that never made the front page. What these wars have in common is silence. Strategic silence. Necessary silence. Silence that we choose to break. Because the world only understands the present when it confronts the ghosts of the past. The files exist. The interpretation is still yours.